Hello everybody, this is your host Vinyl Man Jebb. Want to thank Eric Dover for the last episode. It's got us a little booming. Thank you, Eric. You can check out that episode at the end of this episode. Just click the link. Today we have Patrice Candy Zappa-Porter. She is Frank Zappa's own sister and wrote a book called My Brother Was a Mother, Take 3, which is an amazing title. I love it. You'll hear more about that in the podcast. Welcome.
Hello.
All right, so my first question for you was, we'll start with the big one. You know, we can narrow things down and make it more into questions. But how was it like to grow up with Frank Zappa?
It was a lot of fun. Frank and I, even though he was 11 years older than me, I felt a real intense rapport with him. And he was always protective of me. I was the youngest girl. I have an older sister who's 20 years. I'm 68, so she's 88. She lives in North Carolina. She was from my father's first marriage, and we still are in communication with each other. We've spent several of my birthdays together, so I'm the youngest girl, and I guess I was kind of a fascination to Frank, and he always protected me and kept me. Both him and my dad used to call me Baby, was my name. And, you know, just learning from him, going through his issues with, getting in trouble with the fire marshals in San Diego and all that stuff that happened as he grew up. So, yeah, it was interesting. It had its real good moments.
And I remember reading that in the book, and you and your brother were taken outside to play with the dog, right? When Frank got a scolding for that one.
Right, yeah, they took us outside so we wouldn't hear all the wailing and gnashing of yes.
And what's cool is to see Frank in a new light as being more of a family man than the crazy genius and stuff that everybody, he is a genius and in my opinion is much of who I look up to in music as well. But to see him in a different light as a family man was a really good read, and I really appreciate it. You guys can read this book. It is called My Brother Was a Mother by Patrice Candy Zappa, and it's the Zappa family album. I believe this is volume 3 was the one I picked up. Yes, take 3. Yeah.
3 editions. There was the first one, which I don't believe is in print anymore, and I only have a couple copies for myself. And then there was take 2, and then My Brother Was a Mother, take 3, and that's the one that has everything from the first 2 plus more in it.
And that's the one I picked up. It was a great read, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot of tidbits. And it's cool. You can see like Frank's smallpox vaccination, the baptism and Holy Communion certificates and stuff, and it's just really interesting. And it's a great read for anybody that loves Frank Zappa and wants to know him more. So how did the nickname Candy Zappa come along?
Well, by the time I was born, my mom always used to say, she had the 3 boys, and every time she'd have a baby, she kept wishing it would be a girl. And by the time I came along as the 4th one, she didn't care. So when I was little, my brother Carl, who is the one up from me by 4 years, he would say, "She's so sweet, let's call her Candy."
Ah.
Well, I fooled everybody.
And you know what? It's always the deceiving nicknames, right?
Yeah.
So another thing I noticed too, with the news and stuff, that your family moved to California, and they always say like 1951 in December, and you mentioned this in your book, but it was that's the actual date where they usually say November 1950, right? And the actual time that you and your family moved was December of 1951, correct?
Well, yeah, that's it seems kind of silly to have moved out here and then gone back to Baltimore, have me get born, and then come back out. So the date is erroneous.
And you guys been around moving a lot, but that wouldn't make any sense,
Yeah, that's like entirely weird. So yeah, I was born in 1951.
Ah, awesome. And you actually know Captain Beefheart himself, Don Van there as well, with all the times that Frank.
Frank used to bring him when we lived in Montclair, California. On Friday nights, my mom would make her famous chili, and Frank would make a point of coming over to get some. So one night he brought Don with him, and I was in my room playing guitar and writing songs. He had shown me some chords on the guitar for about a week. He showed me, and then it was like, okay, get to work, and I did. So
And
they
then
heard me sing one of my songs, and Dawn was just like, oh, I love your voice, and well, thank you. That always makes me feel good when you have a member of the establishment in rock music say that they like my voice.
oh, of course,
Very,
it's
yes.
amazing. That's awesome. And I found also really fun, and sorry for a little fast paced here over all the questions, but there's so much, and I loved it. And we'd be here for hours, and I'm down to be here for hours. It's amazing to have all this stuff, and it looks like we're so good. All right, cool. The stream looked like it cut out. New to this live streaming, so everybody just tuning in. I am with Patrice Candy Zappa talking about her book, My Brother Was a Mother, Take 3. So you formed your own band, the New Dawn Singers, correct? As well.
Oh yeah, back in back in the early '60s, when I was in junior high, there was 5 of us plus myself, making 6.
Oh wow.
And there was a hair color out at the time called the New Dawn.
Ooh.
So I wanted. It was folk music, was very popular. Peter, Paul, and Mary. The King, not the Kingsmen. I forget the different names of the groups that were out then, and so we were singing like Puff the Magic Dragon, and we all know what that really means.
Yes.
And it's just other folk songs, and so I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty safe name to take. So we called ourselves the New Dawn Singers, as my longtime good friend Sylvia Robbie she was in and I taught everybody. There was 3 guitarists, and we all had our parts, and so I was working on all of us doing our stuff. And one event that we did was the Girls Athletic Association dinner at our school, and so they wanted us to entertain. And they printed out the programs, but they neglected to put my name in there. So I announced that if you look at your programs, Frank was in the audience that night too with his girlfriend.
That must have been awesome.
And yeah, and I said, if you look at your programs, you'll see that my name is not there. And so technically, I'm not here. And the teacher that misprint, left my name out. She was so embarrassed. I just had to give it to her.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I'm a ghost.
You really?
So
I'm not here. Amongst yourselves.
There, perfect. I'm just Frank Zappa's sister,
Right,
but and that's another thing too.
Well, he was famous at that time.
He was just starting.
Yeah, he was just starting. He was just like, I think he had the
Was it the Blackouts at the time?
Oh, no, that was in Lancaster.
Oh, okay.
This was in the early '60s. I think he was. I'm not sure if he was with the Soul Giants at this time.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was pretty soon after that. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Cause I was another thing too. I think you mentioned too, which is a really cool part of Zappa's history, is the Steve Allen Show, and that was your bicycle.
Yeah,
which
both
is really
my
cool.
brother Carl's and my bike, that they used. I got to stay up and watch the show. It was on late, so that was my reward.
There you go.
Okay, you stay up and watch it.
My drummer for my current band, his father took me downstairs. He's like, I gotta show you a Frank Zappa video. I was like, all right, cool. And it was the bicycle. It was the Steve Allen one, and I was enjoying every moment of it because it's different. It's kind of like has its own like spin where it's like Frank's playing a bike. Like, what is this? And I thought it was so cool. How long
you been playing bike, Frank? About 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That is amazing. It's just something so interesting, and it's something that fits Frank. Knowing like the music that came out later on and stuff, you go back, it's like I could see where it's coming from, and and in the book you can actually see Frank's artwork too. Frank was an artist as well, which I thought was really cool to find out as well.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. In the book, again, to throw another thing, is My Brother Was a Mother, Take 3, Patrice Candy Zappa. On page 50, there's actually really cool artwork. A Day at the Beach. Is there any more you would want to detail on that one that Frank drew for you there?
picture, and he drew it, and he gave it to me.
Oh, there you go,
And
perfect.
it looked like to me, so he didn't expound on anything really.
Oh, that's cool.
He just would draw, and he gave that one to me, and then he gave me that painting also.
Which is awesome. I do see two faces though. I know you said you only see one.
I see one face.
I see like a mirror. Like you have one on the left and then one on the right, like repeating the same face, but like maybe like it's like a mirror reflection.
Oh, that could be.
It's interesting. Like you said, the eye of the beholder for the artwork.
Right.
And yeah, actually, and it was cool finding out how Captain Beefheart got his name. If you want to find that out, you can read the book. And hey, I'll plug the book for you because I think that's a really cool fact for those that love Frank, and also love Beefheart, and especially Muffin Man, is one of the coolest songs.
Could I interject for a second?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
The way to get the book is the website is www.crossfirepublications.com. All one word, lowercase.
Perfect. I will link in the comments on Facebook down below, and I will also link on the description for YouTube as well for everybody to click there and find it. Find the website perfectly for you. And everybody, go get the book. It's a really good read if you're a big Frank Zappa fan, or even if you just want to know about what Zappa was and who he was, which is really cool. So when Freak Out,
what was my dad gambling book, Chances and How to Take Them.
Ooh, cool.
And there's also music from Nolan Porter, my husband, and myself. So it's got a lot of stuff on it.
So it's not just Zappa. Perfect. It's more. It's the other side, the Zappa family, and also related, which is amazing. That is awesome.
And the guy that put it together, my publisher, Greg Russo, his book is on there too, called Cosmic Debris. It is the definitive book on Frank. It's got so much information in it. You might want to check that out too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna probably get that one myself because Greg actually signed a little thanks when I bought this book for me, and I was like, thank you. And I'll definitely check that out because I read, he has the first part of the book is writing how he got in touch with Frank, which is really cool.
Right.
And that was an awesome read too. Usually when I read a book, I skip over the preface, but everything in this book I read, and I'm not a big reader. I only read like rock biographies. So this is something that really had my eye. I read it in one day fully through. I couldn't put it down. So anybody out there that loves rock and roll or music in general should pick this up as well. So your family started working for the Pit restaurant, if I'm correct, if you wanted to go on that a little bit.
Yeah, we opened up, my dad and his brother wanted to open up a restaurant in Upland, California. It was something that they wanted to do. And when it was, just a regular restaurant, Americana, coffee shop, hamburgers, French fries, that kind of thing. And the back room, Frank kind of took that over and put up bamboo curtains and stuff, which the fire department promptly came in and told him to take down. And he set up a makeshift stage, and one night he had the members of his original mother's group there.
Wow.
The Rick was there, Elliot, the guy he fired because he was too high and didn't know where to plug his guitar in. And they made him grow a beard to cover the dimple in his chin. Anyway, there was other musicians. So one night I said, Frank, can I sing? He says, yeah, come on up. He says to Ray, you want to sing with Candy? And Ray says, of course I do. So we sang Leaving It All Up to You. And then I sang by myself. I sang that with Ray. And then by myself I sang I'm a Long Tall Texan, which was one of the novelty songs that came out at that time. And, the audience was made up, I'd say, primarily of the college kids, because there was a college nearby. So the campus crowd was there, and they loved what we did. So that bit me, and I've been working on music ever since.
That would be the bug. That'd be the pusher, I gotta keep doing this, which is awesome. And at first, your dad really didn't want you following Frank's footsteps, correct?
Well, he was kind of nervous about me going off and, living the life of a rock star. So he kind of put the kibosh on me as far as, I think, when I was with the New Dawn Singers, he took me out of that. He wouldn't let me perform with them. I couldn't understand it. I just didn't know why that would happen. So, anyway, those are the times when so many things were happening. It's almost like today. There's so many things happening in the world. You're afraid to step outside your door. So
Exactly.
like,
It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, so he wanted to keep me protected, and that was the mindset at that time. So that's okay. I went and did it anyway. I did it at a later age.
Yeah.
But I got in there anyway. I got my foot in the door.
I got you. Well, it's like that day you were sick, and Frank came up and he goes, I gotta show you Studio Z," And,
Oh yeah.
and you called your mom, and.
That was fun. Yeah, I was home sick from school, and he came and said, "Come on, I want to show you my studio." And I said, "Well, I'm home from school today. I don't think Mom wants me to go, but let me call her and ask." And when I called Mom, I said, "Can I go with Frank to the studio?" And she said, "Oh, Candy, you better not. You're sick from home from school. I don't want you sick." I said, "Okay." So I hung up the phone, and I turned around, and I said, "Mom doesn't want me to go." And Frank gave me this look, this frown that he would get, and he'd say, "You're going." I said, "Okay."
All right. Frank, if it's so.
We got in that mustard yellow station wagon, Chevy
awesome.
station wagon, and we drove out to Archibald Avenue or Street, whatever it is, in Cucamonga. And we walked through the studio, and he was just like a kid because he was so excited. He had all the sets that he had painted for his upcoming movie he was going to make called Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People. And it was just really amazing. His artwork was out of this world. It was fantastic. And we talk about stuff, and he asked me if I dated or had a boyfriend. I said, "Nah, Dad doesn't want me to do that." He frowned, and he didn't like that. But I said, "Well, but we like the Jackie Gleason show." He said, "Jackie Gleason, he's an old man with bad breath." And I always wondered how he knew that.
Yeah. That's all, because that's it's like having, like, back then you had the Dick Clark show too, correct, and stuff like that, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, I had a major crush on Dick Clark. I thought he was saying, "Here I am, 6 years old, with a hard-on for Dick Clark. Come on!" Drinking my chocolate milk, watching American Bandstand. He used to tease me mercilessly about that.
My dad was telling me about the show too, because I asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, I remember that." He goes, "It's just like the Ed Sullivan Show. You had to tune in and you had to watch it, and it was something that you just there was only a few programs on TV that you had to see, and it was like it wasn't as like it was today where there's so much everything. It was very much simpler with certain TV programs that are on at a certain time that you had to tune into, which is really cool." And you had the transistor radios back then too, I believe, as well, which was something my dad said that he used to throw it under his pillow, and his mom would yell at him for listening to the Beatles all the time and all that. So it was something cool. So actually, the biggest cool thing I think about the book, for me, was finding out that your first thoughts on Freak Out, because such a strange album for the time, and such a definitive doing your own music in Frank's way, and it's just really cool. So if you wanted to go on your first impressions of like hearing Freak Out for the first time.
Well, Frank came over to the house wearing that fur coat that he posed with on the front of the album, and his hair flying in the wind. And he came in and he brought the album, and my mom was there, and she was doing mom stuff, making the beds and changing the sheets and what have you. And he comes in and he gets out the little record player that we have, and he puts on Freak Out, and we're listening to it, and at first it was very different because, by that time we were inundated with the Beach Boys and other safe music, that was okayed by the radio stations, but with no airplay whatsoever on this album at that time. It went platinum or gold or whatever it is. He sold like 1 million copies because people were like, "Have you heard this? Have you heard Frank Zappa?" Da, da, da. So I was, when Who Were the Brain Police came on, and the part was, "I think I'm gonna die. I think I'm gonna die." I looked at Mom. She looked at me with utter look of horror on her face, and I looked back at Frank, and he goes, "Isn't this great?" I said, "Yeah, Frank, it's bitchin'." And then I to my school, and I was going to an all-girls Catholic school in Pomona, and I played it for my English teacher, Mrs. Nelson, and she just kind of stood there with her jaw dropped, like, "What the hell is this?" So it had its different. It evoked different responses from different people.
Amazing. For those tuning in on the Zappa the Best group that I just shared the watch video, I will be posting this full video to YouTube. This is halfway through the podcast at the moment. I just wanted to share it to a group so everybody can get to see a little bit of it live and share in the moment. We have on the podcast today Patrice Candy Zappa talking about her book, My Brother Was a Mother, Take 3, the Zappa family album. And I will plug where you can get the book as well and stuff like that as well. Welcome to the video, everybody. So you moved to Florida in '67 from Cali, correct?
Yeah, we lived in Florida twice. We moved there. We went there in 1960, right after President Kennedy was elected. We moved there at the very end of that time, and we stayed for roughly, I think it was about a year, a little over a year, and they wanted my dad. My dad was a teacher, and they had offered him a permanent position and to move us onto the campus of the school. But, my brother Carl and me and Mom, we were homesick. We wanted to go back to California. So we didn't do that. And then the next time, my dad got a job offer in Jacksonville, Florida in 1967 at a co-ed Catholic school, Bishop Kenny. And we moved there, and we found a place, and my dad taught at the school I went to, so I got a ride every morning.
There you go.
So then there was a fight between a black kid and a white kid, and my dad tried to break it up, and one of the guys threw a punch and hit my dad's arm and separated the muscles in his arm for his trouble, and the school wouldn't do anything about it, so he basically read them the riot act. And one day I was coming out of school, putting my books in the locker, and he pulls up and he says, "Come on, baby, we're going home." I said, "Well, I got to get no, just leave everything. We're leaving."
Oh, wow.
Okay. This was May of '68. We got back, we moved back to California, and my dad called Frank that night and found out, because Frank was in New York at the time at the Garrick Theater.
Oh, okay.
And he was coming back to California too, so he wired my dad some money, and we headed back to California, and we moved into this apartment, and that's when Bobby Kennedy was. Oh, I forgot to tell you that while we were there in Jacksonville, that was the time that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Oh, so that's not a good time to be down in the South at that moment, too.
It was a very scary time. Yes,
Yeah.
It was very scary and unnerving. And we get back to California just in time for Bobby Kennedy to get it. So that was a very, how shall I put it, disruptive time in our lives and everyone's. Yes.
Yeah, that's a scary time, and it seems like you nowadays there's things that aren't as bad anywhere close, but it's scary, like you said earlier in the podcast, that it's so much going on that you're scared to walk out of your house, and it's true. That's why music, I think, is such an energy, and I wanted to thank you to come on the podcast to share Frank's music and your own as well, which is amazing. In the least, to be able to have the time, thank you, appreciate it. But
yeah, there was remember the song "Trouble Every Day"?
Yeah,
Frank
exactly.
did? The one line that he was supposed to go on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Ah.
And when the producers heard that song and the one line he says in the middle of it, "Hey people, I'm not white. You know something?
Yeah.
I'm not white. I'm not black, but there's a whole lots of times I wish I could say I'm not white. Well, that line got him kicked off the show.
And
He
it's
never
so,
made
but
it.
the line itself, like I took it, and it's a positive thing. There's so many times I wish I could just be myself and be human, and I love that line of that song, and it was so real. And I think at the time, like Ed Sullivan wasn't ready for that, because like the Doors too, they couldn't say the word higher on air as well, and it was something very interesting for the time. And then they did it anyway, which was great. But
Yeah.
they said, you know what, we're gonna say higher anyway. Jim Morrison looks right into the mic and just does it. I was like, nice. So you got to actually meet
Yeah.
Jeff Beck, but you didn't know who he was till later on, which is
Yeah.
interesting. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was, I went with my dad up to Frank's house this one time. I was about, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. And we were in the basement part of the house, and Frank was talking to this guy and says, Candy, come here, I want you to meet some. I said, okay. So he says, this is Jeff Beck. And I said, hi, how are you? I didn't know who he was. And then I found out a couple of years later who he was, and I was, I shook that man's hand, and I didn't know it. Wow.
That is awesome.
Somebody kicked me.
Yeah. For those experiencing the stream quality, I will be posting the full video right after for the group. And I'll post right in the group for all you guys so you can see it. I'm new to the streaming thing, and the Wi-Fi in my house is not the greatest. So we're just doing it as more of a cool thing for the podcast, which we'll do, and then we'll work on the future, make sure everything's set perfectly. But we'll have the right. So just a reminder, I'm on with Patrice, Candy, Zappa, and talking about my mother was a mother. My brother was a mother. Take 3. There we go. And this was actually originally was an album, right? Originally too.
Yeah, Frank was going to have me do some songs and make an album called "My Brother Is a Mother," but that didn't happen. So when it came time for me to do the book, it was suggested that I call it "My Brother Was a Mother" because Frank wasn't there, and so that's how that came out. And then when I did the second edition, it was suggested that I do take 2 and then take 3. So the next book I write, I don't know what what I want to call it.
Take 4, take 5. No, it's perfect.
I don't know.
It's keeping everybody, in the loop and letting people know the different side of Frank that was more family oriented than what the news or what provided him to be. And I like Greg's statement in the beginning too of like the philosophy views and all that too, which again, that's why I think I really like Frank too with his out there thinking and being able to put his record on and feel like it's okay to be different. It's okay to be yourself in music, which is really something that I picked up on as soon as my dad showed me. I think the first Zappa record I heard was Hot Rats, but then he was like, you got to listen to The Torture Never Stops on Zoodle Lores, and I was like, all right. So it was just something different to be my mind blown and all that stuff, and then being able to, I can't see him live because I'm only 20, but my dad got to see him 3 times and see the Halloween show and stuff as well. It looks like the broadcast has ended due to Wi-Fi error, so we'll just keep going and we'll keep it recorded, and then we'll post the full video on Facebook as well, and I'll share that with everybody. Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi isn't the greatest, so, and I'll edit some of this stuff out in between here. Next question I had for you was, when did Frank get the mustache? When did the famous mustache come into play?
Well, I remember about his hair. I think it was about a 10 or 11, and we went into the bathroom, and I was combing his hair down, because he had what do you call it, the jelly roll?
Yeah, the jelly roll gumdrop.
Well, this is, it's time to, get with it. So the Beatles were popular, and, or just before the Beatles, maybe. And I started combing his hair down, like coming forward. And he laughed, he thought, and I wasn't laughing. He says, "Oh, you're serious? Okay." So I don't know when the mustache came into play, but I think I started the ball rolling with his hair, in a different way. So the next thing you know, he's long hair and the mustache and the imperial or cookie duster as it has. So
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I'm responsible for all that. I'm the one you can, point a finger at, I guess.
No, it's perfect. No, I reason why I called it the Jelly Roll is the Ruben and the Jets reference that he's. I love that doo-wop style that Frank did for that album. I actually bought the actual Ruben and the Jets band that he formed with the like other different guys doing doo-wop, and I'm into that. Was so into that, and no one around my age even knows. Like they know Zappa, but they'll be like, "Why'd you buy this? This isn't Zappa." I said, "Technically, his name's on it. He produced it. I need it." I just love the doo-wop of the 50s, and I try to like I've actually covered an old song by the Empires, one of their songs. It was all just doo-wop, and it was something different, and it was just fun to cover. And I know Frank would appreciate young kids getting into doo-wop again as well, which was awesome. And he kept the older music alive throughout, even with the live stuff he did. I love the shenanigans on stage with, yeah. If you wanted to explain the incident with the guy with the relish and the mustard, and him having the guy like him playing a random routine to the guy getting the guard there, if that exact
Oh,
one.
when after everybody knows who Smothers is, Smothers was his onstage bodyguard.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that happened because after the show ended in England in '71, a guy came up on stage and pushed Frank into the orchestra pit, which is a good 15-foot drop onto concrete. And it, as Frank described it, put a hole in the back of his head, crushed his larynx, pushed his head forward so that it lowered his voice about a third, I think he said, so he became a baritone, and I think it broke his thigh bone, which is the worst bone in your leg to break,
Yeah.
because that's what weight is, and broke some ribs. It just really messed him up, but they thought he was dead when they got down there, and so he hired Smothers, who was an ex-policeman, I think, or former policeman. So this one particular concert that my friend and I went to, he had a excuse me. He had a clothesline strung across the stage, and he was collecting women's underwear.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and somebody in Colorado was going to make him a quilt.
Yeah.
Of all stage.
The infamous panties quilt there.
So somebody had taken a pair of undies and taped it to the bass drum, where there's the hole.
Mm-hmm.
So every time the guy would hit the drum, the pants would fly up, right?
Ooh.
And then, somebody threw a pair of underpants on the stage that they don't know what was in it, but it became the Voodoo Butter underpants, I think they called it. The Voodoo Butter. Something nasty, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then during the concert, some guy, I don't know how he did it, but he had a cup full of, like, condiments, mustard and relish. And he's walking up to the stage, and how he got that close to the stage is kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
But he holds it up to Frank as an offering, and Frank just shook his head no. And then the guy dumped it on the stage. And how he did that, I don't know.
Yeah, how do you...
Frank stops the music. He looks at Smothers, take care of this guy. So Smothers runs down there. He grabs the guy by the cuff, his back collar, and his pants, and he pushes him up on stage, and he's rubbing his face in it, The circular motion now.
Rub it.
Rub it. So Frank turns to the band, and he waves his hand. They make a cacophony of noise. Noise, and then he stops, and he's, "Get the fuck off the stage," is what he told the guy.
Yeah, it's Frank never missed a beat on and when to like diss people, but musically, which is amazing. Like something like the improv that he's able to do and stuff at the spur of the moment.
He's had to deal with a lot of crap on stage. Somebody threw an orange and hit him in the nuts.
Oh, jeez.
One time.
I read that in the book as well. You guys can read that in the book as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think somebody threw something, and it was in Atlanta, something on stage, and Frank had the house lights turned up, and he would not go on until that person was found and escorted out.
Wow. You can't be too careful with that, especially because he knew he was above the crowd that he was making, but the crowd that he had were types that he had to make sure everything was fine, which is important, for him to go on and everything. But it's just cool because I have two Zappa shirts. I got my Zappa for President shirt, and I got my other one with Zappa's face on it, just as Zappa. And for that, I wore it to an Alice Cooper show because I'm a big Alice Cooper fan, and I know the whole thing with Alice being part of Frank's a little bit of a band as well.
Huh?
In the beginning, working with Frank at Studio Z, I believe. And I actually met Dennis Dunaway, and Dennis goes, "I know that guy, the bass player for Alice." I was like, "Yeah," but it was just and a couple of people there that were big Frank Zappa fans, and I think Alice waved at me because of the shirt too. So it was really cool to just see that thing, like wearing a Zappa shirt, actually had people come up to me and talk because it's such a cool thing. I think they see a young kid knowing who Zappa is, and then they look at my dad and go, "You raised him right," which is awesome. I think
He's
it's
raised
perfect.
right,
Yeah.
boy.
Zappa would be happy, I think. Frank would be happy.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I have a couple of little tidbits here, and then the rest you guys can definitely check out that book. If you want to plug the website while I'm looking at the questions here again, you're more than welcome to.
Sure, it's www.crossfirepublications.com.
Yeah, crossfirepublications.com. Perfect. And I'll link a thing down below for all you guys to click on the link. Once this episode's edited and post out, it should be out by literally a couple hours after this has been recorded. Work on it. I have nothing else to do today. Perfect, right? No, I love doing this. This is a passion, a hobby that became something that beyond what I thought it would, and it's amazing that you guys have the time to take and to come on the show and talk about different artists and music, and it's amazing. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, the fava beans incident with Frank, with Kay's parents, Frank's first wife.
Oh, yeah. When Frank was married to his first wife, Kay, I don't know who invited who, but Kay and her parents came over to our house. And my mom and dad were sitting in the living room, and Kay and her parents were sitting on the sofa. And Frank and me and Carl were in the kitchen. Frank was looking for something, some kind of mischief to get into. Ever the impish elf. So he opens the freezer, and he sees a bowl of fava beans. Fava beans look like little turds in the bowl, okay? And so he gets this gleam in his eye, and he hands it to me, and he says, "Candy, go out there and offer these to Kay's parents." I said, "No, I don't want to do that. Come on, Candy, I'll get you into the movies. What he meant by that was I'll buy you a ticket and get you
Yeah.
in." And so I said, "Oh, all right." Frank could make me do anything. That was not quite right. Anyway, so I take the bowl out there, and I held it up as hostessy as I could, and I said, "Would you like one of these?" And they look at each other, and they go, "Oh, no, thank you, dear." And my parents are like, "What the hell is she doing?" And so I walk back in the kitchen, and there's Frank on the floor, rolling back and forth, holding his stomach, laughing so hard. I was so mad at him.
No, it's great. The older brother classics, right? I love it. That's awesome. And again, you guys could read all the shenanigans of Frank and also the family in more view of Frank's family and Candy's family in Candy's book My Brother Was a Mother Take 3 and the Zappa Family album. And it's really, I suggest, as somebody who doesn't read books that much, I read page to page, and in one day I couldn't put it down. So again, highly recommend. Yeah, it's a quick read. It's perfect. And any last remarks that you wanted to add? And we can probably wrap up. Actually, if you.
Well,
Definitely.
I'm just real happy that everyone that loves Frank, likes me too.
There you go.
And I've gone to 3 of the Zappa-Nales, which is the music festival in Germany every year that they have. And Wolfhard Kutz and his wife Tracy, they're just super people, and they take such good care of all the artists, and the crowds, the people, the fans they're incredible. I had somebody stop me in the street that had seen me like 3 years before and said, "Candy?" And I stopped, and I went, "Yeah." "Oh, could I have my picture taken with you?" "Sure."
That's awesome.
I had no idea who this person was, but he saw me and he remembered me, and that was awesome. I signed things. I got to sell some of my books, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
just meet. It is. It's an experience you don't forget.
And it's for the fans too. They don't forget either. Like you said, you didn't know the guy, but he remembered. He remembered you and remembered seeing, because it's a magical moment for fans to be able
Yeah,
to
it's
be
the
with all
love
those.
Frank, that they passed on to me, and I'm honored, because
Perfect.
there's no one else ever in this entire world like Frank.
No.
No one will ever be like him.
We can all be inspired and want to be or strive to be something, but there is no one like Frank Zappa because it's something that I like. My drummer looks like Frank a little bit. I tease him. I sent him a picture of the books. Like, there you are, Ezra. But he's actually was wearing a Lumpy Gravy shirt when I first met him, and I told my dad, I said, I gotta find somebody wearing a Zappa shirt. That's who I'm gonna make a band with. First day of college, I walk in and he's wearing a Lumpy Gravy shirt, and I said, that's it. That's gonna be my whatever he plays. He's got to be in a band, and even if he wasn't, we'd be friends. And he goes, I'm a drummer, and that's what started it all. And we used to sing, I'm the Slime and Muffin Man and all this stuff in the car. Torture Never Stops. So he's every lyric, we just be yelling. It was like me and my dad with his. My dad and his friends used to do the same thing, where they have the Zappathons, he'd call it, where they go like, "Oh, you come up to my dorm room and you put on the record player and you just played all of Apostrophe or Overnight Sensation. And you had to know every single word." And I'm like, that's what it's about. It's about the love of being able to put on these records that are timeless. And I laughed at your comment too, with the records, with saying, "Does anybody remember records?" And now there's a huge comeback, and it's
Right.
incredible. That I have like a record collection of over 1,000, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm finding at flea markets. And to have like I sent you a picture of the first album there with Freak Out, because I was like, oh, you get in to see that I have it. I was like, this is just so cool. I think I got it for Christmas, and I was like, this is the best Christmas gift ever, to be able to have an original double LP of Freak Out, which is really cool. So, and it's just an ongoing thing, and I love sharing the music, so it's perfect to have you on. And new crowd can get into Zappa still, and it's amazing. And music is timeless.
Wanted to add one more thing.
Yeah,
My
no problem.
husband is Nolan Porter, who a lot of people know. He's with the Northern Soul group. He didn't meet Frank, but he was in his house at one time. His producer, Gabriel Meckler, had to go up there, and he took Nolan with him. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, when Frank broke up the original group of the Mothers, Lowell George, Jimmy Carl Black, and Roy Estrada went over to Lizard Records, where Nolan was recording his album. And they all met, liked each other, and they ended up playing on his first album.
Oh, wow.
His first album. Yeah, Nolan. And so it's kind of like we're all in a circle. We're all connected.
Small world.
Cosmic.
Yeah.
And we just back together. It was like we all came full circle. I've been with Nolan since '99.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, so there's the connection. We're all together.
It's cool, and it is cool because even at a younger age, I'm realizing a lot, and being able to learn every podcast episode, I learn something. That's the strive, and to be able to learn something. If I make a mistake behind, on scenes, you learn something like how to record better and stuff like that. But in the music sense, I'm learning a lot from inspirations. The thing that got me really in the book was a big comment for me, and maybe help newer artists out there as well. The biggest thing I took from it, and almost like got really emotional, almost cried a little bit, was the fact that Frank like didn't have friends when he was younger, and was kind of like staying in, and got frustrated with that. I'm the same way. I've been trying to figure out why, but maybe it's because I'm meant to make music or something. So you're not, anybody that's out there that's feeling that way, you're not alone. There's big names that have had the same issues, and they've worked hard to work against it. And it's something amazing that Frank was able to. He healed a ton of people, and it's insane. It's so cool.
Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned everybody else, but my brother Bob, who passed away last December 8th,
Oh.
as a matter of fact, in 2 days it'll be a year. And when we were all growing up, he was kind of like, well, he went into the Marines,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank him for his service. Definitely,
Yes.
up in heaven where he is, of course.
Yeah, and he passed away from a condition called amyloidosis.
Oh, wow.
And it's a rare condition, but it's something it's going to start getting more attention. And if you ever come across, or anybody comes across, a foundation that needs a donation, give to it, because it can be hereditary.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, guys, definitely.
I hope I haven't left anybody out. If I have, I'm sorry.
we can call
You
again.
know.
We'll do another episode. It'll be perfect. Well,
Okay.
but thank you so much, Candy, for coming on, and we'll wrap up here.
Well,
Bye,
thank you for
everybody.
having
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. Definitely be able to reach out and to talk to somebody who's known Frank, and not just known Frank, is Frank's sister, of course.
me.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.